The first time I heard my name whispered in the dark, I thought my mother had finally come back for me. Rain slammed against the narrow basement windows of the Manhattan Historical Archive hard enough to rattle the old glass panes in their frames. The storm outside had swallowed the city whole sometime after 11 p.m., turning the streets into rivers of reflected headlights and blurred neon. Down in sublevel B, the air smelled like dust, paper, and cold metal shelves that had probably been standing there since the 70s. My shift was supposed to end an hour ago, but the archive scanner had frozen again halfway through a city records transfer, and if I didn't finish tonight, my supervisor would spend the entire morning reminding me that budget cuts made employees replaceable. I rubbed my tired eyes and stared at the glowing monitor in front of me while another file slowly uploaded. 27 years old, 2 master's degrees, and I spent my nights cataloging dead people's paperwork underground like some ghost librarian no one remembered existed. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. The digital clock beside the scanner blinked 12:43 a.m. in angry red numbers. Somewhere deeper in the archive, metal creaked softly. I froze for half a second, listening. The building always made noises at night. Pipes, old elevators, air ducts. At least that's what I told myself every shift. I exhaled slowly and reached for the next storage box stacked beside my desk. The label read Bennett, Elizabeth, restricted. My stomach tightened immediately. Bennett, my last name. Probably coincidence. New York had millions of people. Still, my fingers hesitated over the cardboard lid before I finally pulled it open. Inside sat dozens of yellowed newspaper clippings, photographs, and legal documents bound together with faded red string. I picked up the top photograph carefully. A woman stared back at me with familiar gray eyes and soft brown hair falling over one shoulder. My breath caught so fast it hurt. My mother. I hadn't seen her face in 15 years. Not since the night she disappeared without a goodbye and left me standing in our apartment hallway clutching a stuffed rabbit while police officers searched rooms she was never coming back to. My hands started shaking. "That's impossible," I whispered. The archive lights flickered once above me, then twice. The hum of the scanner died completely. Silence rushed into the room so suddenly it made my ears ring. Every hair on my arms lifted at once. Somewhere behind the shelves, footsteps echoed softly against concrete. Slow, measured, not rushed enough to sound afraid. My chair scraped backward as I stood. "Hello." Nothing answered. The storm outside cracked with distant thunder. Another step echoed from the darkness beyond aisle 7. My pulse slammed hard against my ribs. Security wasn't supposed to patrol this level until 2 a.m. I reached for my phone beside the scanner, but the screen had no signal. Of course it didn't. This basement killed reception every night. The footsteps stopped. Complete silence settled over the archive again. Then a man's voice drifted through the darkness low enough to barely exist above the sound of rain. Claire Bennett. My blood turned to ice. Nobody downstairs knew my full name. Nobody. I stared toward the rows of towering shelves disappearing into darkness, while my heartbeat became painfully loud in my ears. "Who's there?" My voice sounded smaller than I wanted. No answer. Just darkness. Then another flicker of lightning illuminated the far end of the archive through the tiny basement windows for one brief second. Long enough for me to see the outline of a tall man standing motionless between the shelves in a black coat and leather gloves. Watching me. Waiting. And somehow, even before he stepped forward into the light, I knew my life had already changed the moment he whispered my name. I should have run the moment I saw him move. Instead, I stood frozen beside the scanner while lightning flashed across the basement windows again, illuminating the rows of steel shelves for half a heartbeat before darkness swallowed everything whole. The man stepped forward slowly, polished black shoes silent against the concrete floor. Tall, broad shoulders beneath a dark wool coat still damp from the storm outside. He moved with the calm confidence of someone who had never once doubted the world would make room for him. My fingers tightened around the photograph of my mother until the edges bent. "How do you know my name?" I asked. My voice came out sharper this time, steadier than I felt. He stopped at the end of the aisle, close enough now for me to finally see his face beneath the weak emergency lights. Dark hair brushed back neatly. Pale skin. Strong jawline shadowed with exhaustion instead of carelessness. But it was his eyes that unsettled me most. Cold blue. Controlled. the kind of eyes that looked like they missed nothing. He glanced down at the photograph in my hands. You found the box faster than I expected. A chill slid down my spine. Who are you? For a second, he just watched me. Rain hammered against the windows overhead, while somewhere deeper in the building the old pipes groaned softly. Then he reached into his coat pocket and removed a pair of black leather gloves, one finger at a time with slow, precise movements. Damien Moretti. The name hit me instantly. Not because I knew him personally, but because everyone in Manhattan knew the Moretti name. Luxury hotels, real estate, political donations, expensive charity galas that appeared in magazines besides smiling celebrities and senators. People whispered other things too. Rumors that never made newspapers. Connections no one could prove. My stomach tightened hard. You should not be down here, I said quietly. One corner of his mouth almost moved. Not quite a smile. Neither should you. I took a careful step backward. If this is some kind of joke, it is not funny. Claire. The way he said my name made my pulse jump again. Familiar somehow. Too familiar. I need you to listen carefully. No, I shook my head immediately. You do not get to walk into a restricted archive in the middle of the night and tell me what to do. Lightning flashed again. This time it illuminated something silver resting on the shelf beside him. A photograph frame. I had not noticed it before. Damien picked it up carefully and walked closer. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to keep distance between us, but my feet refused to move. He stopped a few feet away and turned the frame toward me. My breath vanished completely. It was another photograph of my mother, younger than I remembered, smiling beside a black town car while snow fell around her shoulders. And standing next to her was a man with the same blue eyes staring at me now. Younger version. Same face. Same cold expression, softened only slightly by the woman beside him. No, I whispered. That is not possible. Damien watched me carefully. Your mother worked for my family 12 years ago. Worked how? Archivist. Translator. Research specialist. I stared at the photograph while my thoughts tangled together violently. My mother had told me she worked in publishing before she disappeared. Small offices. Editing contracts. Nothing dangerous. Nothing connected to powerful men in expensive coats who appeared in underground archives after midnight. You are lying. I wish I was. His voice lowered slightly. Softer now. Your mother disappeared because she found something she was never supposed to see. The lights overhead flickered again. Then the entire basement went dark. Complete darkness swallowed the archive so suddenly I could hear my own breathing. Somewhere near the stairwell above us, a metal door slammed shut hard enough to echo through the building. Damien's head lifted instantly toward the sound. His expression changed for the first time since I saw him. Alert, dangerous, focused. Then he looked back at me and spoke quietly. Claire. Another sound echoed upstairs. Footsteps. More than one person, coming down toward us. The footsteps above us grew louder fast enough to make my pulse stumble. Heavy, deliberate. More than one person moving across the archive floor overhead. Damien did not look surprised. That terrified me more than the sounds themselves. He stepped toward me once, lowering his voice. We need to leave. Who is upstairs? I whispered. People who should not know you are here. My heartbeat slammed harder. You keep saying things like that without explaining anything. Another metal door groaned somewhere above us. The old building carried sound strangely underground. Every footstep echoed through the pipes and concrete walls until it felt like the archive itself was breathing around us. Damien's eyes stayed fixed toward the stairwell at the far end of the room. Focused, calculating distances. Exits. Threats. Claire. His voice sharpened slightly. Do you trust your supervisor? The question caught me completely off guard. What? Answer me. I barely know her. Good. He nodded once like I had confirmed something important. Rain cracked violently against the windows overhead. Lightning flashed white through the basement for half a second, and in that brief light, I noticed an earpiece hidden beneath Damien's dark hair. A faint voice murmured through it too quietly for me to understand. He touched the earpiece once. How long? A pause. His jaw tightened slightly. Understood. My mouth went dry. Are those your people? No, every instinct inside me screamed then. Run. Leave. Pretend none of this was happening. But my feet would not move because somewhere underneath the fear was something worse. Curiosity. I looked down at the photograph still clutched in my hand. My mother standing beside Damien years before I ever heard his name, smiling like she trusted him. You knew her, I whispered. Damien looked at the photograph for one brief second. The coldness in his expression shifted almost invisibly. Yes. Then tell me what happened to her. Silence stretched between us. Somewhere upstairs, another set of footsteps crossed the floor. Closer now. Damien exhaled slowly through his nose. Your mother was trying to protect you. From what? He looked directly at me then, and for the first time since I saw him in the dark, I caught something dangerous beneath his calm control. Not anger. Fear. From the people looking for her. My stomach twisted violently. You said she disappeared because she found something. She did. What? Another pause. Then Damien reached into his coat pocket again and removed a folded piece of paper worn soft at the edges like it had been carried for years. He handed it to me carefully. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it beneath the weak emergency lighting. It was a birth certificate. Mine. Claire Elizabeth Bennett. Date of birth. Manhattan Presbyterian Hospital. Mother, Elizabeth Bennett. Father section blank. Except someone had written a name beneath it later in dark blue ink. Alessandro Moretti. I stared at the page without breathing. No, I whispered instantly. No, that is not real. Damien's expression did not change. Your mother hid you after he died. The room tilted slightly around me. Moretti. The same last name. Same eyes. Same impossible connection threading through every answer I never had growing up. You are lying, I said again, but my voice sounded weaker now. Why would I lie about this? Because people like you always want something. Another loud noise echoed upstairs. This time closer. A door opening. Voices. Damien stepped toward me quickly. We are out of time. I jerked backward immediately. Do not touch me. His eyes locked onto mine. Claire, listen carefully. In the next 60 seconds, men are going to walk into this archive looking for the file your mother hid. If they find you standing next to it, your life changes tonight whether you want it to or not. The basement lights flickered violently overhead. Then the stairwell door burst open at the far end of the archive. Shadows moved across the concrete floor beyond the shelves, and one unfamiliar male voice echoed through the darkness. Find the girl. My body moved before my brain caught up. The second I heard that voice echo through the archive, survival instinct hit hard enough to drown out everything else. I grabbed the photograph and stumbled backward between the shelves while my pulse hammered so violently it blurred my vision. Damien caught my wrist before I could bolt in the wrong direction. This way. His grip was firm but controlled. Not painful. Somehow that made it worse. Like he already expected me to follow him. Let go of me. Quiet. The command came low and sharp. Another flashlight beam swept across the far end of the archive, cutting through the darkness in pale streaks. I heard shoes against concrete. Male voices. Closer now. Split up. Check every aisle. My breathing turned shallow instantly. Damien pulled me behind a row of old steel cabinets near the back wall, just as another flash of lightning illuminated the basement windows overhead. Up close, I could smell rain on his coat mixed with cedar and cold winter air. He crouched slightly beside me, listening. Completely calm. Completely focused. Like danger was something familiar to him. I hated how steady he looked while my entire body shook. Who are they? I whispered. People connected to your mother's disappearance. My stomach twisted painfully. You keep saying that like she is dead. Damien looked at me for half a second too long. That silence answered more than words ever could. I swallowed hard and looked away immediately. No, I could not think about that now. Not here. Footsteps echoed closer through the aisles. One flashlight beam passed only a few feet from where we stood hidden between the cabinets. I pressed myself against the cold metal shelves instinctively. Damien shifted slightly in front of me without thinking, blocking the line of sight from the aisle. Protective. The realization unsettled me almost as much as the men searching downstairs. You should not have opened that file tonight, he said quietly. I stared at him. You knew it was here? Yes. Then why did you let me find it? His jaw tightened once. Because hiding the truth stopped protecting you a long time ago. Another flashlight beam swept nearby. One of the men cursed softly somewhere across the room. My throat felt painfully dry. If these people wanted me, I whispered, why wait 12 years? Damien's expression darkened slightly. Because until tonight, they were not certain your mother left anything behind. My fingers tightened around the folded birth certificate still clutched in my hand. Alessandro Moretti. The name would not stop repeating in my head. You expect me to believe I am connected to your family? Damien lowered his voice further. I expect you to understand that your life was built around secrets before you were old enough to remember them. I shook my head immediately. No. My mother worked 2 jobs. We lived in Queens. We struggled to pay rent. Nothing about my life had anything to do with powerful families or whatever this is. That was the point. The words hit harder than I wanted them to. Somewhere nearby, a shelf slammed shut. Closer now. My heartbeat stumbled again. Damien reached into his coat slowly and removed a small silver key attached to a faded blue ribbon. He held it toward me carefully. The moment I saw the ribbon, the air left my lungs. I knew it instantly. My mother used to tie my hair back with ribbons exactly that color when I was little. Where did you get that? My voice cracked slightly. Damien's eyes never left mine. Your mother gave it to me the night she disappeared. Everything inside me went still. The archive suddenly felt too small, too cold, too dark. She told me if anything happened to her, he said quietly, I was supposed to find you before they did. Another flashlight beam flashed across the shelves directly beside us. A man's voice echoed only feet away now. Someone is back here. Damien's eyes sharpened instantly. Then he looked at me once more and spoke in a voice so calm it somehow terrified me even more than the footsteps closing in around us. Claire, when I tell you to run, do not stop for anyone except me. The flashlight beam swept across the cabinet beside us again, bright enough to burn white streaks across my vision. I stopped breathing completely. Footsteps approached slowly through the aisle only a few feet away now, careful and deliberate like whoever was searching already knew we were close. Damien did not move. His shoulders stayed relaxed. His expression stayed cold and unreadable beneath the weak emergency lights. I could not understand how someone could look that calm while danger closed in around us from every direction. Then his hand found mine in the darkness. Warm, steady. When I say now, he whispered, run toward the west stairwell. My pulse jumped violently at the contact. What about you? I will be behind you. Another shadow crossed the aisle. Closer. One of the men spoke quietly somewhere near the archive entrance. Check the back rows. My chest tightened hard enough to hurt. Damien counted silently under his breath while listening to the footsteps. 1, 2, 3. Then his eyes snapped toward me. Now. Everything happened at once after that. Damien stepped away from the cabinets suddenly while I bolted in the opposite direction between the narrow shelves, clutching the photographs and birth certificate against my chest. My shoes pounded against concrete loud enough to echo through the basement. Voices shouted behind me instantly. There she is. Fear hit like ice water flooding my veins. I ran harder. The archive blurred around me into flashing lights and endless rows of metal shelves while thunder cracked above the city outside. I heard footsteps chasing somewhere behind me, but another sound cut through them almost immediately. Damien's voice. Low. Controlled. Sharp enough to stop the entire room cold even without shouting. I could not make out the words. Only the authority behind them. I reached the west stairwell breathless and shoved against the heavy metal door with both hands. Locked. Panic surged instantly. No. No, no, no. My fingers slipped against the handle while footsteps echoed closer behind me. Then Damien appeared from the darkness beside the shelves, moving fast enough to make my heart stumble. He grabbed the handle above mine and twisted something hidden beneath the lock mechanism. The door clicked open instantly. How did you do that? I gasped. Move. We burst into the stairwell together just as voices echoed from the basement behind us again. The heavy door slammed shut. Silence rushed around us except for the sound of my ragged breathing. Damien immediately pulled a small black keycard from his coat and slid it through the stairwell handle from the inside. Another metallic click echoed through the stairwell. Locked again. He looked up toward the floors above us. Listening. Always listening. Come on. We climbed quickly. My legs shook from adrenaline while the old concrete stairs spiraled upward around us. Floor B2. B1. Ground level. Rain hammered against the building overhead hard enough to vibrate faintly through the walls. Somewhere below us, metal slammed against metal. Someone trying the locked door. Damien, I whispered breathlessly. What is happening? He kept moving upward. Your mother hid something before she disappeared. What? I do not know. I stared at him in disbelief while climbing another flight. You expect me to believe that? If I knew where it was, Claire, tonight would look very different. We reached the lobby access door near ground level. Damien stopped suddenly before opening it. His hand lifted toward my shoulder carefully. Listen to me. His voice dropped lower, more serious than before. When we walk out there, stay beside me. Do not talk to anyone. Do not stop walking unless I tell you. Why? His blue eyes locked onto mine completely. Because someone inside this building already betrayed you. My stomach dropped hard. Before I could ask what he meant, Damien pushed the lobby door open. Cold air rushed toward us instantly, carrying the scent of rain and wet pavement. The archive lobby beyond stood nearly empty except for one security guard near the front desk staring down at his phone. The moment he looked up and saw Damien beside me, all the color drained from his face. And that was when I realized the guard already knew exactly who I was. The security guard stared at me like he had seen a ghost walk through the lobby doors. His hand tightened around the edge of the front desk hard enough for his knuckles to pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Rainwater dripped from Damien's coat onto the marble floor beside me while thunder rolled through the city outside. Nobody moved for one long second. Then Damien spoke quietly. Open the garage exit. The guard swallowed immediately. Mr. Moretti, I was told if the girl appeared, open it. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The guard nodded so fast it looked painful and reached for the security panel beside the desk with shaking fingers. My stomach twisted harder watching the interaction. It was not just fear in the guard's face. It was recognition. Obedience. Like Damien Moretti was the kind of man people listened to before he even raised his voice. The security gate buzzed somewhere beyond the lobby. Damien touched the small of my back gently, guiding me toward the side hallway leading underground. Move. I'm not getting into a car with you. The words came out before I could stop them. Damien paused beside me slowly. Rain and distant sirens echoed faintly from outside, while the security guard kept his eyes glued firmly to the desk now, like looking at either of us too long might ruin his life. Damien lowered his voice. Claire. No, my chest tightened painfully. You do not get to show up in the middle of the night, tell me my entire life is fake, and expect me to follow you into some underground garage. His blue eyes stayed locked on mine calmly. You think staying here is safer? I opened my mouth to answer, but another sound cut through the lobby instantly. The elevator behind the front desk dinged softly. My entire body went rigid. The elevator doors slid open slowly, revealing two men in dark coats stepping into the lobby. I recognized neither of them, but something about the way they scanned the room made fear crawl sharply up my spine. Focused. Searching. Hunting. One of the men looked directly at me. His expression changed immediately. Damien stepped in front of me before I even processed the movement completely. Protective again. Controlled. One hand slid casually into his coat pocket, while his voice remained perfectly calm. Garage. Now. This time I moved. Fear finally overpowered stubbornness. Damien guided me quickly down the side hallway while footsteps echoed behind us in the lobby. I heard one of the men say something sharp. Then the security guard answered too fast. Too nervous. The underground garage smelled like gasoline, wet concrete, and rain drifting through the open vehicle gate near the alley exit. Black SUVs lined the far wall beneath dim industrial lighting. Expensive. Immaculate. Men in dark suits stood near them watching the entrance immediately the moment Damien and I appeared. Every single one straightened at once. Boss. Damien nodded once without slowing down. The word hit me strangely. Boss. Not Mr. Not sir. My pulse stumbled again. One of the suited men opened the back passenger door of the nearest SUV instantly. Damien motioned toward it. Get inside. I do not even know where you are taking me. Somewhere secure. That is not an answer. Lightning flashed across the garage entrance behind us bright enough to illuminate the rain pouring outside in silver sheets. Damien stepped closer, then close enough that his voice dropped beneath the storm itself. Claire, listen carefully. The people looking for you tonight have already infiltrated the archive, the security staff, and probably your apartment building too. My blood ran cold. What? You cannot go home. How do you know where I live? The second the question left my mouth, I regretted it because something unreadable crossed Damien's face. Not guilt exactly. Something quieter. More dangerous. Because I have known where you lived for a very long time. My heartbeat stopped for one terrifying second. You were watching me? Damien held my gaze without blinking. I was making sure nobody else could. Behind us, The garage elevator dinged softly again. Damien's eyes lifted instantly toward the sound. His entire posture sharpened. Inside the vehicle. Now. And this time, hearing footsteps approaching behind us through the underground garage, I finally obeyed. I slid into the back seat of the SUV just as Damien shut the door behind me with a solid thud that sealed out most of the storm noise from the garage. The interior smelled like black leather, cedar, and faint traces of expensive cologne. Soft amber lights glowed overhead while rain streaked across the tinted windows in silver lines. Everything about the vehicle felt unreal. Too polished. Too quiet. Too controlled. My hands were still shaking around the folded documents from the archive. Damien climbed in beside me a second later while one of his men moved into the driver's seat without a word. The doors locked automatically. Somewhere behind us in the garage, voices echoed sharply. Damien glanced once through the rear window. Go. The SUV pulled away smoothly across the wet concrete floor and out into the storm-covered streets of Manhattan. I watched the archive building disappear behind us through rain-blurred glass, while my heartbeat slowly struggled to catch up with reality. Nothing about tonight made sense anymore. My mother, the photographs, the birth certificate, Damien knowing where I lived. Watching me. I turned toward him sharply. You followed me for years. Damien loosened the cuffs of his dark coat slightly before answering. Calm. Unbothered. Like the question barely surprised him. I monitored situations around you. That is not better. His eyes met mine briefly. It kept you alive. I stared at him in disbelief. You do not get to decide that. Someone had to. The quiet certainty in his voice made anger spark hard through the fear twisting inside me. You think because you have money and security guards and expensive cars that you can control people's lives. Damien looked out the rain-covered window beside him for a moment before answering. No, his voice lowered slightly. I think your mother trusted me to protect you after she could not anymore. The anger in my chest faltered unexpectedly at the mention of her. Outside, Manhattan blurred past in glowing streaks of white headlights and neon reflections across flooded streets. Midnight traffic crawled slowly beneath the storm while thunder rolled between skyscrapers overhead. I realized suddenly we were not heading downtown toward the financial district. We were moving north. Where are we going? My residence. I almost laughed from disbelief. Absolutely not. You cannot return home. I will stay with a friend. No, you do not get to say no to me. Damien finally turned fully toward me then. His blue eyes looked colder in the dim lighting inside the SUV. Not angry. Worse. Controlled. Claire, the people searching for you tonight already knew your full name, your workplace, and where to find the archive file connected to your mother. Do you understand what that means? I looked away first. Because I did understand. Someone had been watching long before Damien appeared downstairs tonight. The realization made my stomach tighten painfully. The SUV slowed at a red light near Lexington Avenue. Rain hammered against the roof overhead. I looked out the window automatically and froze. Across the street, beneath the glowing awning of a closed pharmacy, stood a man in a dark coat staring directly toward our vehicle. Still, motionless despite the rain soaking his shoulders. Watching. My pulse jumped violently. Damien. He followed my gaze instantly. The man across the street turned away the second Damien noticed him and disappeared into the crowd moving along the sidewalk. Damien's expression hardened almost invisibly. The driver touched his earpiece immediately. Vehicle behind us changed lanes 2 blocks ago. Damien nodded once. Keep driving. My mouth went dry. Someone is following us. Yes. The answer came too calmly. I stared at him. And you say that like it happens every day. For me, it does. The SUV accelerated through the intersection smoothly while city lights flashed across Damien's face in shifting patterns of gold and white. For the first time since tonight started, exhaustion hit me all at once. My entire life had cracked open in less than 2 hours, and somehow the most terrifying part was no longer the men searching the archive. It was the man sitting beside me acting like he had expected this night for years. Damien looked toward me quietly. You are safe with me, Claire. I should not have believed him. I barely knew him. Everything about him screamed danger, secrecy, power. But somewhere beneath the fear and confusion, another realization settled heavily into my chest. Damien Moretti had been watching over my life long before I ever learned his name. The farther we drove uptown, the quieter the city became. Manhattan after midnight always felt different during storms like this. The sidewalks emptied. Storefront lights dimmed. Rain swallowed sound until the entire city looked blurred and distant beyond the tinted SUV windows. I sat curled slightly against the leather seat, clutching my mother's photograph so tightly the edges had started bending beneath my fingers. Across from me, Damien remained perfectly composed. One hand rested loosely against his knee while his attention shifted constantly between the windows, mirrors, and reflections passing outside. Watching everything. Always watching. The SUV turned onto a private street lined with black iron gates and old stone buildings hidden behind rows of trees stripped bare by winter. Expensive silence lived here. The kind of neighborhood where nobody asked questions because everyone already knew better. The gates ahead opened automatically the moment our vehicle approached. I stared through the rain-streaked glass at the massive building rising beyond them. Dark gray stone. Floor-to-ceiling windows glowing warm gold against the storm. Elegant. Cold. Untouchable. It looked less like a home and more like the kind of place powerful men disappeared inside while the rest of the city pretended not to notice. "You live here?" I asked quietly. Damien glanced toward me once. "Yes." "Alone?" Something unreadable crossed his expression briefly. "Rarely." The SUV rolled beneath a covered entrance where more men in dark suits stood waiting beneath the lights. One of them stepped forward immediately as we stopped. Tall, dark blonde hair, scar along one eyebrow. He opened Damien's door first. "Everything is secure upstairs." Damien nodded once before looking toward me. "Come inside." I hesitated automatically. Exhaustion dragged heavily at my body now, but instinct still screamed at me not to trust any of this. Not the building. Not the guards. Not the man standing beside the open car, door waiting patiently for me to decide. Damien extended his hand toward me finally. "Claire." My pulse jumped again at the sound of my name in his voice. Calm. Low. Certain. I hated that part of me already reacted to it. Slowly, I stepped out of the SUV into cold rain-scented air. Thunder rolled somewhere over the river while the city lights shimmered across wet pavement beyond the gates. The blonde guard's eyes flicked toward me carefully before returning to Damien. Respectful. Curious. "This is Luca," Damien said. "He handles security here." Luca gave a small nod. "Miss Bennett." The fact that everyone already knew my name made my skin prickle. Damien rested one hand lightly against my back again, guiding me toward the entrance. Warm marble floors stretched beneath us once we stepped inside. The lobby alone looked larger than my entire apartment building. Soft golden lighting reflected off black stone walls and enormous windows overlooking the storm outside. Somewhere overhead, quiet piano music drifted through hidden speakers. Everything felt controlled down to the smallest detail. Like chaos simply did not exist inside Damien Moretti's world unless he allowed it to. A woman dressed in an elegant dark suit appeared from the hallway ahead, carrying folded towels. "You are soaked," she said gently. Her accent sounded faintly European. I prepared the East guest suite. Damien took one towel and handed it directly to me before answering. "Thank you, Sophia." I wrapped the towel around my shoulders slowly while trying not to stare at the enormous staircase curving upward through the penthouse. My entire life fit inside 700 square feet in Queens. This place felt unreal, dangerous in a completely different way than the archive basement. "You can rest here tonight," Damien said quietly. "Tomorrow we will talk." I looked at him sharply. "Talk about what exactly?" "Your mother." The exhaustion inside me vanished instantly. "No," I shook my head hard. "You do not get to keep dropping pieces of information and then disappearing." Damien studied me for a long moment beneath the warm lights. Rainwater still darkened parts of his coat, while thunder flashed against the windows behind him. "You want the truth?" "Yes." His jaw tightened slightly. "Then you are not going to sleep much tonight." Before I could answer, another man entered the lobby quickly from the hallway carrying a black tablet. He stopped beside Damien immediately. "Boss." His voice lowered. "We found something in the archive footage." Damien took the tablet silently. I watched his expression change the second he saw the screen. Colder. Sharper. More dangerous than before. Then he turned the tablet slowly toward me. And there on the security footage frozen beneath grainy basement lighting was my mother walking through the archive 12 years ago beside a man whose face had been deliberately blurred out. I could not stop staring at the frozen image on the tablet. Grainy security footage flickered beneath the penthouse lights while rain crawled down the massive windows behind us in silver streams. My mother moved through the archive basement wearing the same camel-colored coat she used to throw over her shoulders every winter when I was little. I remembered that coat. Remembered burying my face against it while she smelled like vanilla perfume and cold air from outside. My chest tightened painfully. Beside her walked a tall man in a dark coat, his face distorted beyond recognition, like someone had deliberately erased him from the footage. "Who was that?" I whispered. Damien's expression remained unreadable. "We do not know yet. You said my mother worked for your family." "She did." "Then why would her face appear in hidden security footage from 12 years ago?" Damien looked at the screen again carefully. "Because that was the week she disappeared." Silence swallowed the room after that. Even the soft piano music drifting through the penthouse suddenly felt distant and strange. I stared at my mother's image while questions crashed endlessly through my head. She had lied to me. About her job. About my father. About everything. The thought should have made me angry. Instead, it only made me feel hollow. Damien handed the tablet back to the man beside him. "Run facial reconstruction on the male subject again." "Already processing." The man answered quietly before disappearing back down the hallway. Damien turned toward me slowly. "You should eat something." I almost laughed. "You think I can eat right now? You are exhausted. I want answers. And I want you conscious when you hear them." His calm voice made irritation spark sharply through my chest again. "Do you always talk like that?" "Like what?" "Like everything is under control." Damien held my gaze steadily. Panic rarely improves situations. I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped because deep down I hated that part of me found his calm grounding instead of frightening. That realization unsettled me almost as much as everything else tonight. Sophia returned quietly carrying a tray with tea and food I had not realized I was hungry enough to notice until the smell reached me. Fresh bread, soup, coffee, normal things, human things. The contrast nearly broke me after the insanity of the last few hours. "Thank you," I whispered automatically. Sophia smiled softly before leaving us alone again. Damien motioned toward the sitting area near the windows overlooking the storm-covered skyline. "Sit." I hesitated only a second before obeying. Exhaustion dragged heavily at my bones now. The couch beneath me felt softer than anything I had ever touched in my life. Damien remained standing near the windows with one hand in his pocket, watching the city below. "When my father died," he said quietly, "your mother disappeared 3 days later." I looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" Thunder rolled low across Manhattan outside. Damien's reflection flickered faintly in the glass beside the storm. "It means she was frightened." "Of who?" "People connected to my father's business." "Mafia business?" The word felt strange spoken out loud. "Real." Damien did not answer immediately, which somehow answered enough. My pulse stumbled again. "My mother was involved with dangerous people." "No," his voice lowered slightly. "Your mother was trying to escape dangerous people." I wrapped my hands around the warm coffee cup Sophia left beside me, trying to steady the shaking in my fingers. "Then why stay in New York?" "Because leaving would have confirmed she took something." My eyes lifted instantly toward Damien. "What did she take?" This time he looked directly at me before answering. "Information." The room suddenly felt colder despite the warmth of the penthouse lights around us. "What kind of information?" Damien crossed the room slowly and sat across from me. Closer now. Too close for my heartbeat to stay steady. "The kind people destroy lives to keep hidden." Lightning flashed across the windows behind him bright enough to illuminate the sharp lines of his face for one brief second. Tired eyes. Controlled expression. A man carrying too many secrets alone. "Claire," he said quietly, "there is something else you need to understand." My stomach tightened instantly. "What?" Damien held my gaze without blinking. "The people searching for you tonight are not only looking for what your mother hid." A pause. Soft. Heavy. "They are looking for you specifically." The words settled into the room slowly like smoke after a fire. "They are looking for you specifically." I stared at Damien across the penthouse sitting area while thunder rolled beyond the windows overlooking Manhattan. Somewhere below us, the city kept moving like nothing had changed. Taxis cutting through rain-soaked streets. Neon signs flickering against puddles. Thousands of people living ordinary lives while mine collapsed piece by piece inside this building. Why? My voice sounded smaller than I wanted. Damien leaned back slightly against the couch opposite mine, one hand resting near the untouched glass of whiskey Sophia had placed beside him earlier. We are still trying to understand that. No, I shook my head immediately. You already know more than you are telling me. His jaw tightened almost invisibly. Yes. At least he admitted it. That somehow made the truth heavier instead of easier. I looked down at the photograph of my mother still resting beside me on the couch cushion. You said she hid information. Damien nodded once. And whatever she hid disappeared with her. Then maybe they should be looking for her instead of me. Silence stretched again. Heavy this time. Damien's blue eyes stayed fixed on me carefully before he answered. They stopped believing your mother was alive years ago. My chest tightened so sharply it hurt to breathe. Part of me had known that already. Deep down. The older I got, the harder it became to believe someone vanished for 12 years voluntarily, without leaving even one message behind. Still, hearing it spoken aloud felt different. Real. Permanent. I stared out toward the storm-covered skyline, trying to steady myself. You knew her well? Damien looked toward the windows too. Better than most people did. Were you? I hesitated. Were you close? His expression changed slightly then. Softer around the edges for one brief second before control returned. Your mother worked for my father first. That is not what I asked. He looked back at me quietly. No, it is not. My pulse stumbled strangely. I hated how impossible he was to read. Every answer felt carefully measured. Controlled. Like he had spent years learning how to survive conversations without revealing too much. You said my father was Alessandro Moretti. Saying the name still felt unreal. Damien nodded slowly. Yes. Was he? I swallowed hard. Was he a bad person? Thunder cracked sharply outside before Damien answered. He was a powerful man. That is not the same thing. A faint, almost smile touched the corner of his mouth, then disappeared again. No, it is not. He stood suddenly and crossed toward the windows overlooking Central Park. Rain streaked down the glass behind him while the city lights painted silver reflections across the room. My father built an empire around loyalty, he said quietly. But powerful men create enemies whether they deserve them or not. And my mother got caught in that. Damien's eyes lowered slightly. Your mother saw something connected to his death. The air left my lungs slowly. You think someone killed him? I know they did. The certainty in his voice made chills rise across my arms. Then why has nobody been arrested? Damien glanced toward me over his shoulder. Because people with enough money rarely solve problems in courtrooms. Silence settled again. Somewhere deeper inside the penthouse, I heard faint voices and footsteps moving through hallways beyond sight. Security. Staff. An entire hidden world operating quietly around Damien Moretti every hour of the day. My life suddenly felt painfully small compared to his. I looked toward the massive windows again and realized dawn was still hours away. I should call someone, I whispered. My boss. My friend Rachel. No, the answer came instantly. I frowned sharply. You cannot isolate me from everyone. I am trying to keep you alive. You keep saying that like somebody is coming to kill me. Damien crossed back toward me slowly, then stopped directly in front of the couch. Close enough that I had to tilt my head upward slightly to hold his gaze. Claire. His voice dropped lower. More serious than before. The archive footage was erased 12 years ago. My stomach tightened instantly. Okay. Which means someone restored it tonight intentionally. Fear crawled sharply up my spine. Why would they do that? Damien's eyes locked onto mine completely. Because they wanted you to see it. A cold silence filled the room after that. Then somewhere upstairs inside the penthouse, an alarm suddenly began to ring. The alarm cut through the penthouse sharp enough to make my entire body jolt. A cold electronic pulse echoed from somewhere upstairs, followed by rapid footsteps moving across the floor above us. Damien reacted instantly. The softness that had briefly appeared while talking about my mother vanished completely. His expression hardened back into something controlled and dangerous. He crossed the room in 2 quick strides and pressed a small button hidden beneath the marble shelf near the fireplace. The piano music stopped immediately. Stay here, he said. Absolutely not. Another alarm tone echoed through the penthouse. Red security lights flickered once near the hallway ceiling before stabilizing. My pulse hammered painfully while voices murmured somewhere beyond the walls. Damien touched the earpiece beneath his hair. Report. Static crackled softly before a voice answered. North elevator breach attempt failed. Exterior perimeter secure. Damien's jaw tightened. Any internal access? Not yet. My stomach dropped hard. What does that mean? Damien looked toward me briefly. It means someone tried to enter the building. Tonight. Yes. Fear climbed sharply through my chest again. I stood from the couch, immediately clutching the photograph and birth certificate against me. I want to leave. Damien stared at me for one long second, like he could already predict every terrible outcome waiting outside these walls. No, you cannot keep saying no like I belong here. Right now you do. The words hit strangely. Not cruel. Not possessive exactly. Worse. Certain. Luca appeared from the hallway carrying a black tablet and stopped beside Damien. Garage cameras picked up 2 unidentified vehicles circling the block. Damien scanned the tablet quickly. Any visual confirmation? Not yet. Plates are fake. I wrapped my arms tighter around myself, trying to steady the shaking in my hands. This is insane. Nobody answered because apparently for them it was normal. Damien handed the tablet back to Luca. Double security on the east corridor. Nobody accesses this floor without clearance from me directly. Luca nodded once before disappearing again. I stared at Damien in disbelief. How are you acting calm right now? He looked toward the rain-covered windows briefly. Because panic gets people hurt. You keep saying that. Because it is true. Another silence settled between us while thunder rolled outside. I watched him carefully then. Really watched him for the first time since tonight started. The exhaustion beneath his eyes. The constant tension hidden behind his composure. The way every sound in the room still pulled part of his attention automatically. Damien Moretti lived like a man expecting danger every hour of every day. How long have you been doing this? I asked quietly. Doing what? Protecting people. Watching exits. Sleeping beside alarms. Something flickered across his face too quickly to fully understand. Long enough. The answer should have frustrated me. Instead, it made something ache unexpectedly in my chest. I hated that feeling immediately. Damien crossed toward the windows, overlooking the storm again, while speaking softly into his earpiece. Orders. Locations. Security updates. Every person in the building listened to him instantly, without hesitation. Power wrapped around him naturally like breathing. And somehow that terrified me less now than the idea of leaving this place alone. My eyes drifted toward the hallway beside the staircase, while Damien spoke quietly to his security team. One door upstairs stood slightly open beneath the dim lights. Curiosity pulled harder than caution before I could stop myself. I moved silently across the penthouse and climbed the first few steps toward the upper level. Damien noticed instantly. Claire, I am just looking. Do not wander. I ignored him anyway and crossed toward the partially open room upstairs. The moment I stepped inside, my breath caught completely. Photographs covered the walls. Hundreds of them. Me. Walking to work. Sitting in coffee shops. Carrying groceries into my apartment building. Leaving the subway during winter storms. Some recent. Some years old. One photo showed me at 19 sitting on library steps laughing beside Rachel outside Columbia University. Another showed me asleep against a bus window with headphones on. My stomach dropped so violently I nearly stumbled backward. Oh my God. Damien appeared in the doorway behind me silently. I turned toward him, shaking now from something deeper than fear. Betrayal. You said you monitored situations. My voice cracked hard. This is not monitoring. Damien's expression remained unreadable. Claire, you watched my entire life. Silence filled the room between us while rain hammered the windows beyond the city skyline. Then Damien spoke quietly. Because if I did not, you would not have survived it. I could barely breathe standing in that room. Photographs surrounded me from floor to ceiling like evidence collected by someone obsessed enough to document an entire life piece by piece. Me buying coffee before work. Me carrying textbooks across campus during snowstorms. Me crying alone on a park bench 2 years ago after Rachel called to tell me her father died. My chest tightened violently seeing that one because I remembered thinking nobody noticed me that night. Apparently Damien had. I turned toward him slowly while anger and fear tangled so tightly inside me, I could not separate them anymore. This is insane. Damien stayed near the doorway watching me carefully. Not defensive, not apologetic. Somehow that made it worse. Claire, do not say my name like that. My voice cracked harder than I wanted. You had people following me? Watching over you. That is not better. Thunder shook the windows behind us while rain crawled across the glass in silver streaks. Damien stepped into the room slowly. You were never supposed to see this. I laughed once sharply without humor. Really? Because it looks pretty permanent. His eyes lowered briefly toward one of the photographs beside me. I kept records of possible threats. Threats? I stared at him in disbelief. I worked in an archive basement and spent Friday nights eating takeout while watching old documentaries. You were still a target. For what? My voice rose this time. What exactly is so important about me? Damien's jaw tightened hard enough for a muscle to flicker beneath his skin. Silence stretched for one long, unbearable second before he finally answered. Because you are Alessandro Moretti's daughter. The room seemed to tilt slightly around me. Hearing it spoken aloud again hit differently this time, standing inside a room filled with proof that my life had never truly belonged to me. No, I whispered automatically. You do not know that. I do. A birth certificate is not proof. Damien walked toward a desk near the windows and opened a locked drawer quietly. He removed a small envelope worn soft at the edges from age and handed it toward me. My fingers trembled taking it. Inside was a photograph, older than the others, faded around the corners. My mother stood smiling beside a dark-haired man, holding a baby wrapped in a pale blue blanket. Me. The man holding me had Damien's eyes. Not exactly the same shade. Darker, but unmistakably related. My breath caught painfully. That was taken 3 months after you were born, Damien said softly. I stared at the photograph while memories crashed violently through my head. My mother crying alone some nights when she thought I was asleep. The way she panicked anytime unfamiliar cars parked near our apartment too long. How she changed jobs constantly. Moved constantly. Locked every window twice before bed. She had not been paranoid. She had been terrified. Why would she hide this from me? I whispered. Damien's voice lowered. Because once people knew who your father was, your life became dangerous. I looked up sharply. And you thought secretly watching me my entire life was normal? No, his answer came immediately. Honest this time. I thought it was necessary. Something inside my chest cracked hearing that. Because he meant it completely. Every photograph. Every report. Every hidden security detail woven through years of my life. Damien believed he had been protecting me. You should have told me. His blue eyes held mine steadily. Your mother made me promise I would not contact you unless there was no other choice. I froze. You spoke to her before she disappeared? Yes. When? Damien looked away for the first time since I met him. The night she vanished. My pulse stumbled hard. And you never looked for her? The silence that followed answered enough before he finally spoke. I never stopped. Something about the exhaustion in his voice made the anger inside me hesitate unexpectedly. Before I could respond, a sharp knock echoed downstairs, followed immediately by Luca's voice through the penthouse intercom. Boss. Damien touched the earpiece beneath his hair instantly. What happened? Static crackled softly before Luca answered. We intercepted a message from the archive server. My stomach tightened immediately. Damien's expression darkened. What message? A pause. Then Luca spoke quietly enough that I almost wished I had not heard it at all. Someone uploaded a new file under Claire Bennett's name 15 minutes ago. The room went completely silent after Luca's words. Rain tapped softly against the windows behind me while the city lights shimmered below the penthouse like another world entirely. Damien's expression changed instantly. Every trace of emotion vanished behind cold focus so fast it made my stomach tighten. Bring it to the war room, he said quietly into the intercom. Now. Already routing it upstairs. The line clicked dead. I looked between Damien and the photographs covering the walls around us, feeling like I could not catch my breath anymore. What does that mean? Damien stepped toward the door immediately. It means someone wants your attention. You keep saying things like that as if this is some game. He stopped beside me then, close enough that I could see exhaustion beneath his calm expression for the first time tonight. Claire. His voice lowered carefully. Nobody survives this world by underestimating messages delivered in the middle of the night. The way he said survives sent another chill through me. I followed him downstairs anyway because at this point fear and curiosity had become impossible to separate. The lower level of the penthouse looked different now. More tense. Guards moved quietly through hallways with earpieces and tablets, while security monitors flickered across hidden screens near the walls. The soft luxury I noticed earlier had shifted into something sharper beneath the surface. Controlled danger. Damien led me through a set of black double doors into a room lined with digital monitors and floor-to-ceiling maps of Manhattan glowing beneath dim lights. Lucas stood near the center table waiting beside several screens displaying archive files and surveillance feeds. He glanced toward me once before focusing on Damien again. The upload came from inside the archive server directly. Timestamp? Damien asked. 1:22 a.m. My pulse stumbled. That was after we left. Luca nodded grimly. Yes. One monitor flickered before displaying a single file folder labeled Bennett, Claire, Private Access. My throat tightened instantly. Damien stepped beside the screen. Open it. The file loaded slowly while static crackled across the monitor. Then an audio recording appeared dated 12 years earlier. My hands started shaking immediately. No, Damien looked toward me carefully. Claire, that is my mother's voice. Even distorted through old speakers, I recognized it instantly. Soft, warm, slight rasp when she was frightened. My knees nearly gave out beneath me hearing her again after all these years. Luca pressed play quietly. Static filled the room first. Then my mother spoke. If this recording reaches Claire, her voice cracked slightly before continuing. It means I ran out of time. Every breath in my chest stopped completely. Damien stood perfectly still beside me while the room disappeared around us. There was only my mother's voice now. Alive, frightened, real. Claire, the recording whispered softly. If you are hearing this, you cannot trust anyone connected to the Moretti Empire. I turned sharply toward Damien instantly. His expression did not change, but something dark flickered behind his eyes. The recording continued. There are things Damien does not know about his father. My heartbeat slammed painfully hard. And there are things Damien himself can never find. Silence filled the room except for the storm outside and the sound of my own breathing growing uneven. Your father loved you, my mother whispered through static. But love does not survive inside families built on secrets. Tears blurred my vision before I realized they were falling. I had spent 12 years imagining what I would say if I ever heard her voice again. Anger, questions, relief. Instead, all I felt was grief sharp enough to hollow me out from the inside. Then the recording shifted. Papers rustled softly in the background. My mother lowered her voice. Claire, listen carefully. If Damien found you before they did, it means he kept his promise. I looked toward Damien slowly. For the first time all night, uncertainty crossed his face too. Real uncertainty. The recording crackled again. But if he ever tells you what happened the night your father died, my mother's breathing trembled softly through the speakers. Do not believe everything he says. The file ended abruptly after that. Silence swallowed the room whole. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Damien looked toward the frozen monitor displaying my mother's name and whispered something so quietly I almost did not hear it at all. Elizabeth, what did you hide from me?